I'm Jeanine Centuori. I'm director of the ACE Center, which stands for Agency for Civic Engagement at Woodbury University. Our mandate is to look for projects that serve a community that maybe can't afford an architect or a professional, or maybe they're not used to working with those kinds of professionals. And so we really look for projects that have a need and where we can fill a niche that doesn't necessarily replicate professional services, but fills this void, this in-between. So our projects tend to have very low budgets, and they tend to be sort of high energy, and we look for where we can make the most impact with the least amount of cost and resources. So that's our challenge, that's our mission. The studio is a high energy studio where we have about 7 weeks to design and then about 8 weeks to build. And so during that 7 weeks of design, we feel it's important for students to use their time wisely and work as quickly as possible and not get hung up on things. There's no time for that. So, and oftentimes that sort of speed and intensity is really good for the quality of the design gestures that come out. So in the very beginning, we give the students the design assignments, so they know that they're going to be looking at an outdoor classroom and these park amenity folly elements on the bow tie site. So they know that those are the two projects that they're going to be working on. We took them to both sites and they see the site, and then they also meet with the client, the interface, the person who they're going to have to be selling their projects to. So in the case of John Muir, they met with the principal, Greg Miller, and he told them what he wanted on the site, and it was very straightforward. He said, look, I want a place where about 40 students can sit and a place where teachers can teach. That's sort of like a stage, and a sense of enclosure so that students don't get too distracted by being outside. And he used the word, I think it was awesome, a million times, like he wanted something awesome.
In my mind, I was thinking I had seen something, an outdoor space at CSUN that it was basically big concrete blocks. So I was envisioning, before Woodbury got involved, just kind of big concrete blocks that students could sit on, enough for 30 or 40 students, and maybe a concrete stage. Again, something very basic. And then we would just kind of plant around it. And it was, in my mind, I was thinking just something very functional, nothing that had any style or design to it.
And I had a meeting with Greg, and I immediately thought he was an interesting guy, very open and energetic, and seemed like a really strong principal and wanted nothing but the best for his school. And he, I showed him our portfolio of projects, and I said, if you want us to be involved, we have to do something creative. We have to, that's our mission, is to bring, it has to have a quality of architecture, which is sometimes very elusive, but it has to have that magical, ineffable thing that we call architecture. Then when we went to the bow tie site, we met with Julia Meltzer, the director of Clock Shop, and she gave us a tour of the site.
I'm the director of Clock Shop. Clock Shop is an arts organization that has a space in Frogtown, which is right across the river from where we are now. And one of the projects that we do is called the Bow Tie Project. For the last 2 years, we've been working with California State Parks on a partnership here on this piece of land, which is about 18 acres of post-industrial land that California State Parks acquired in 2003 and has been sitting, basically lying here kind of fallow with nothing happening for the last decade.
So yeah, my first impression of the Bow Tie Park was like, wow, we're gonna build on this? Like, where do we start? There was a strange combination of both the nature-esque feel of the environment, but as well as having the concrete, urban-esque portion of it So for us to combine the two different elements of being so urban and so nature, it was the challenge on how do you make the connection between the two and where do the two lines meet.
And so the students who chose that particular site had to work really hard to figure out, how to make architecture around such a loose set of criteria.
My name is Oscar Corletto. I am a co-instructor for the ACE studio, Design Build Studio. I was co-instructing with Jeanine Centuori, and my primary role is to educate and facilitate the construction portion of the studio. So pretty much take the actual designs that the students come up with and see them through until completion, so that way they have a fully developed, or ideally fully developed, project at the end of the studio.
The structure and the initial idea was to create a path from one side of the park to another. So we wanted something very continuous, but in a way that we could expand the entire span of the park without actually having to build every inch of the way.
So right now I'm building a model for one of the pieces that I'll be using in school. So the idea comes from sort of like a cloud, and children can play within the cloud. So these pieces right now are being designed, sort of have like that ABC sort of type program. This is Cloud A, which is mainly used for sitting and planting space. So the children can sit here while having some plants on the side that will be planted by themselves. And then there will be other different options, sort of like there will be a couple ones for teaching purpose, and then there will be a couple ones for like blocking visual and audio purposes. So yeah, that's basically what I'm doing right now.
So I'm just making a study model based on what kind of shape, what structure I want my project to look like. So I'm taking this folding kind of system, trying to fold chipboard, working with basswood, and just seeing where it's gonna get to. This is gonna go on the river next to us, on our site. I have a site plan over here, so I'm not sure which exact location, but somewhere in the middle probably. Yeah.
I'm working on a bench, so detail element for the project. So trying to figure out some seating. Just a little mock-up model for now.
You agree?
So our concept is, since the school is John Muir, we were looking into John Muir and his hiking trail, and we came up with the concept of nature and landscape. So that's what we have for the outdoor classroom.
At about 4 weeks in, both sets of clients came and gave them feedback. And their feedback was very interesting.
About that location,
The great thing about architecture is it helps you develop a thick skin, and just it's the nature of the beast in architecture. You have to be really comfortable with getting ripped on by other architects and designers, and even your clients, because that way everyone gets what they want out of it, especially you at the end realize that you got something completely different that you had expected when you got into the beginning of the phase.
From the time that we started with Woodbury, I was always impressed by the level of expertise that they brought. I didn't know, coming from the outside and working with students, what their abilities would be, but it was very obvious from early on that we were working with soon-to-be professionals, and we were being treated like clients. So in all of our meetings as we talked, they were very attuned to what we were asking for. And then when we had the meetings to go over the designs, we were impressed by every design they had. In fact, the first meeting when they presented the 4 different designs, it was tough because there was 4 great designs to choose from, and trying to pick apart what we liked from one design or the other was difficult. But I was always impressed by the way that the Woodbury students, and with the help of the faculty, just really gave us a project that was way beyond anything we could have imagined.
I would say the 2 sets of clients were almost opposite. The other clients, Julia Meltzer and her people from Clock Shop, in collaboration with the California State Parks people, that was Sean Woods and Stephanie Campbell, they were very much, they're very in tune with art and very aware of the art world and a little bit of design, and so their critiques were much more about how can these structures operate at a higher level architecturally and in the design world.
I mean, I think that the original proposal was really ambitious, and it has some similarities to the structure that's further down on the site that was done in 2014 with it's like a kind of like a viewing, we call it a viewing pod. So we were looking for something that was similar to that, but not duplicating it, and that just would provide people with a place to sit, but within a structure that is designed and that is obviously really considered and beautiful. So yeah.
So in the end, what's interesting about the design process, normally we have one set of clients for a single semester. This was an experiment in having these 2 different projects and 2 different sets of clients because it was just a lot for us to handle. In the end, I think the benefit was that the students were able to see each other's projects, and they were able to see a different kind of project going on alongside of theirs. So the 2 projects were very complementary and I think fed each other in an interesting way. So in the second half of the semester, roughly 8 weeks, we embark on a construction process.
At John Muir, the first thing that I had to do was build a foundational pad. So it was a giant, just like a giant platform. And also, as simple as it is, they had to regrade some areas because it had a slight slope. And so they had to take all the dirt, the soil, and as much gravel as they could and the rocks and kind of eliminate that, and then also build this platform, which none of the students have ever done.
My name is Evan Say. I go to Woodbury University. I'm a 4th-year student, and we're working on a design build project this semester in studio. And so right now we're working on an outdoor classroom at John Muir Middle School. So we're working on placing in concrete piers that will support a stage. So the stage is going to be about this space here. It's a 200 square foot stage space that we're placing in the ground flush with that end, and then it'll be elevated on this side. There will be walls that back that'll run this entire space here. It'll come across and around over to here. And then we have laid out on this side here some bench seating that will be set at a set interval. Each of those stakes represents the front of a bench. So we're setting up the stage that will then look out towards this bench seating. And so right now we're leveling all of these concrete piers here, so that the stage will be level across the space. So it's just a long process of leveling each one, making sure each pier is supporting properly, and then connecting those with the other ones to ensure that the whole stage would be level across the board.
So from the beginning, when we came to the site, we saw a pretty much uneven and empty piece of land that we had to take care of. We took a lot of plants out that had very deep roots. We were leveling the ground, the earth, because it was very uneven, a lot of rocks. We were cutting out the concrete, taking out pieces. It was a lot of work.
You know, it's like we were kind of figuring things as we went. We didn't know what we were working with. So we started planning the site. We knew we were going to put some piers in. So we started digging these holes for the piers and then tried to figure out a way to lay our foundation work because the structure that we have is pretty heavy. So working with our instructors, in a collaboration with our instructors and us, we decided to do some piers, some woodwork, and a concrete slab. So today we're just finishing up the concrete slab. We laid off our wood foundation, and now we're just waiting to see how it comes out.
Here we have put in the stage, all the subframing, the decking. We've put up we actually had the contractor come in, pour all the cement, and put in the footings and put some of the posts in for us. And then we came in and put all the Trex on the walls. And now we're just finishing up this last little seat here that's on the stage wall. So with the seat, it's a seat where it's for the teacher. When they're on the stage, they have a place to sit down and rest a little bit while they're teaching or waiting for the students to answer questions or something on paper. It's gonna have front and back of the gray Trex that's on the wall, so you won't really see a lot of the framing that's underneath. It's gonna be just like the walls. But the walls they have, the stage walls have a front and back, and all you can do is you barely see like an inch of this yellow pole that we put in. And it gives it a nice like it kind of like shines through this gray Trex.
A lot of painting was done between the two of us. Like every yellow thing that you see here was like all us mainly. And from there, after the contractor finally put in the post, we started working on the walls and putting in the composite decking, the Trex, on the walls. And then the bench group finished their portion and they started installing.
Derek Shabani, come to the office. Derek Shabani.
They started to install the benches into the site as well, and yeah, that's basically it, I think.
We're working at the site right now to have the projects ready and available, so once the final does come for the client, we could have it ready and avoid any vandalism like they have here, and avoid the projects being vandalized, graffitied on, or just marked up for the grand opening to the client and their supporters on Saturday, May 7th.
One of the other things, the Bowtie Group, what their biggest problem wasn't known until the end, because they built everything here on campus, and then they had to move these large structures onto the site, which was insane. It's almost like seeing the circus coming into town. So you had to rent these large trailers and then load these things up with these massive pieces of constructed lumber and metal frames and things. It just kind of, you get the funny looks on the freeway, which is also kind of exciting. And then basically you need a lot of physical energy and power. And by the end of the semester, there is none. So it's like you have to like tell the students they have to like pull this from somewhere.
And in the end, they were, you know, remarkably complete in time for the openings on that Saturday. And then we had an open house celebration at each of the sites in one day, and people came out and saw it. Lots of family and friends came, and lots of followers who were just interested to see the work also came.
Yeah, so the project finished about 3 weeks before the end of our school year. And it was amazing how every day, you know, it's not meant to be like an eating area, you know, it's meant to be a classroom. But every day there would be kids in there. We had kids who were doing their own little play one day at lunch on the stage, and they had taken on these roles, and it was doing a bit of improv. But the kids love it. And, you know, they always start with the, wow, it's amazing. Like, wow, did you see how it curves? The other part of it is once they really get into the space, because we've had a couple classes use it, they're all super impressed by just how you feel that you're in a classroom and you're away from the world. And so that while you're still out in beauty, it's not like, oh, I'm distracted by people walking by or anything like that. Just the way it's designed really helps to bring the kids in, focus, and they feel like they're in a whole nother place. Woodbury came in and designed a space that not only is way more functional, but the design is incredible. I mean, it really just makes the space come alive, and it went from being something that was just going to be nice to have for teachers to use to a place that really is a classroom for our kids, but it's also a main stop on the tour of Muir and has the wow factor that we always look for.
They did a great job at incorporating our thoughts about revisions and considering what we needed as a client. And you know, I think it was a great project for them to be able to practice on that, like design, build, consider what your client wants, and like incorporate those suggestions and then proceed and complete the project. We plan to use these 2 additional projects, this one that I'm sitting in right now and the benches, basically for people who come and visit the site. And I've been out here on days where we're not doing programming, and I've seen people sitting here. This piece of land, this site, is actually used by a lot of people who are out here biking or walking, and people just stop and sit, which is what we hope people do. That they stop and sit, look at the river, think about where they are, that they have a place to, like a comfortable place to sit down in an otherwise not super hospitable landscape. So our interest is to do programming here before this site becomes what it will be, to get people to come here, to think about the river, and to imagine what things could happen here. So that's our interest. Our interest is to bring people here now, so we all as a community and as people who visit here can think about what this site will be before it, in a way, gets like tamed or kind of manicured, you know.
Woodbury University has provided these structures, these unique bird viewing platforms, unique benches that once again connect the people and people who engage the bow tie space, who come to clock shops activities, and many of the public who commute through the bow tie parcel. They engage them by saying, like, you look at this unique structure, and when they come onto the structure, they reconnect with the river that gave their very city its name. the Los Angeles River, and it's a unique way to kind of engage the community and the public, and it's a way to showcase the space that the bow tie and kind of ponder upon the question, like, what can this space be? What can this space provide to every Angelino, every person from surrounding the community of the Los Angeles River?
The students were extremely productive this semester, and I think that had to do with the small size of the teams and the demands to get these things done for these clients that they formed a relationship with. The students cared deeply about their work because they saw that these clients were not just going to take this work and use it for a week. They're going to be using it for a good long time. And so they really felt that sense of responsibility.
This semester, I think it maybe has changed me a little bit as a designer, because now I will actually understand what it means to, like, when you're building things, like this stuff is actually it might actually be used by a person. This actually, people are going to be touching the wall if it was to be built. And the smaller details are kind of a little more important to me now.
The importance for architecture and civic engagement is, for me, the relationship we start to develop with the community. And as far as I know, in this program, we really thrive on that. We make sure to have a real-life client that we have developed these needs, and that way we make sure that we are working with a local community. In this case, we were working with Burbank and also the Elysian Valley community, and these are two separate and very different communities that will need and respond to the projects that they have been giving in totally different manners.
Ultimately, it's about serving something in the world. It's about making the world a better place, even if that's just a tiny little, in a very humble way. But beyond that, we have tons of communities, diverse communities in this city. Everything under the sun exists in LA, and I often feel like Woodbury is a microcosm of Los Angeles in that we have representations of every culture, every economic background. Everything exists at Woodbury. It's a really wide spectrum, and in some ways I feel like this outreach work capitalizes on that phenomenon in that it bridges the communities of LA with the communities at Woodbury, and our students, they have a lot of what I would say is heart. They want to serve the world, and I think that's part of this millennial generation as well. I think that's a big part of our identity, is to do this kind of meaningful work in the community.